There is a country above the ground, and there is another country below it. And I am not talking about some fairy tale, some bedtime nonsense to make children behave. I am talking about Britain. The actual, physical, stubbornly real Britain that exists beneath your shoes at this very moment. Tunnels that carried coal and secrets and frightened families in the dark. Bunkers where men in suits planned for the end of everything. Stations where no train has stopped in decades. Caves where people lived, worked, drank, and died without ever seeing the sun. The ground you walk on every single day is not solid. It is riddled with holes, and those holes have stories that would keep you awake. Come on, subscribe, and let's start. Number 26. The Edinburgh Vaults beneath the South Bridge. In 1788, Edinburgh completed a bridge, not over water, but over a valley, a great stone structure called the South Bridge, connecting the Old Town with the university buildings to the south. It had 19 arches and was considered a triumph of Georgian engineering. Within a few years, tenement buildings enclosed both sides, and the arches were walled in. Floors and ceilings were added inside the blocked arches, creating around 120 dark, airless vaulted chambers beneath the street. Nobody crossing the South Bridge today would know they are on a bridge at all. It looks like any other road, with shops and tenements on either side, until you reach a short stretch of railings halfway across and glance down into the Cowgate Valley below. Early on, these underground spaces were put to sensible use. Cobblers set up workshops, taverns opened, merchants stored wine and textiles. A haberdasher named James Henderson kept his linens down there, and his name was found carved into a door that still hangs in the Mercat Tor's reception. For about 30 years, the vaults served as an extension of the bustling street economy, but the bridge had been built quickly, and the surface was never properly sealed. Water seeped through the sandstone. Damp rotted everything it touched. By the 1820s, the legitimate businesses had gone, and the very poorest of Edinburgh's citizens moved in. Families of 10 or more crammed into rooms no bigger than a cupboard, in total darkness, with no water, no ventilation, no sanitation. Fish oil lamps provided the only light, and the stench of stale waste made the air barely breathable. Crime followed poverty, as it always does. Illegal whiskey distillation, gambling dens, body snatchers rumored to store corpses overnight. By the 1860s, even the poorest had left. The vaults were filled with rubble and forgotten for over a century. It was not until 1985 that a chance excavation revealed the network again, and Edinburgh remembered what it had buried beneath its feet. Today, sections are open for guided tours, and they remain exactly as unsettling as you would imagine. Number 25. The Victoria Tunnel in Newcastle upon Tyne. Beneath Newcastle, running 2.5 miles from the town moor to the River Tyne, sits a tunnel most residents have no idea exists. It was built between 1839 and 1842, not for people but for coal. The Lalaze's main colliery needed to move its product to the river, but horse-drawn carts through narrow medieval streets were slow and expensive due to road taxes. The colliery owners hired engineer William Gillespie to build an underground wagonway. 200 men took nearly 3 years to dig it through boulder clay, with a base course of stone supporting a brick arch. At its deepest point, it runs 85 feet below the surface and drops 222 feet from entrance to exit. The opening ceremony on the 7th of April 1842 was a spectacle. Cannons fired as 8 wagons emerged from the tunnel mouth, 4 carrying coal and 4 carrying ladies, gentlemen, and a band of musicians. The tunnel cut transport costs by 88%, but the coal seams were damaged. The colliery owners went bankrupt, and the tunnel closed in 1860 after just 18 years. For nearly 80 years it sat forgotten beneath the growing city. Its second life came in 1939, when the city engineer converted it into a communal air raid shelter for 9,000 people. Coal dust was cleaned away, walls whitewashed, concrete blast walls added, benches and 500 bunk beds installed, and chemical toilets enclosed in canvas cubicles were built near the entrances. Thousands sheltered there during the Blitz. The Luftwaffe used Newcastle as a navigational aid, so residents spent longer underground than in many other cities. After the war, the tunnel was sealed again. Guided tours began in 2008, run by the Osborne Trust. Number 24. The Burlington Bunker beneath Corsham in Wiltshire. 100 feet below the honeystoned market town of Corsham lies a 35-acre subterranean Cold War city, codenamed Burlington. It was designed to house 4,000 government personnel in complete isolation for 3 months after a nuclear strike. The site exploited former Bathstone quarries that had already served as a secret aircraft engine factory for the Bristol Aircraft Corporation during the Second World War. In the 1950s, the complex was approved as a self-sufficient underground city stretching over a mile, with 60 miles of internal roads. It contained offices, laundries, kitchens, canteens, a hospital, dormitories and an underground lake for drinking water. 12 fuel tanks kept 4 generators running. It had the second largest telephone exchange in Britain, a BBC studio for prime ministerial broadcasts, and an internal lamps-on tube system for relaying documents by compressed air. The evacuation plan was elaborate. 4,000 essential workers would assemble in Warminster, unaware of their destination, before being driven on a 37-kilometer journey to Corsham. Senior Whitehall officials would gather at Kensington Olympia and travel by special train. The Prime Minister would come by helicopter at the last moment. A secret rail spur off the London to Bristol line existed for the royal family. By the 1980s, the entire concept was obsolete, warning time having shrunk to 4 minutes. When decommissioned in 2004, unopened boxes of government-issue ashtrays and civil service tea sets were found gathering dust in a city that had never been lived in. Part of the site was sold to Octavian Wines, which now stores millions of bottles worth over £1 billion in those climate-controlled tunnels. Number 23. Kelvedon Hatch Secret Nuclear Bunker in Essex. A nondescript bungalow in the Essex countryside hides a 91-meter tunnel descending to a 3-story bunker, 125 feet underground. The brown tourist signs pointing to the secret nuclear bunker are perhaps the finest example of British irony in existence. Built in 1952, at a cost of £1.5 million, on farmland compulsorily purchased from the parish family, it originally served as an RAF OTR station, a hardened sector operations centre for fighter command designed to defend the London sector. The walls are 10 feet of reinforced concrete, surrounded by a Faraday cage sitting on a gravel bed that would absorb shock. Water tanks hold 24,000 gallons above the bunker. Over the decades, it became a regional seat of government and finally, a regional government headquarters. In the 80s, £10 million was spent upgrading it to house 600 people for 3 months. A commissioner with the power of life and death would have governed surviving Essex from down there. Armed guards patrolled until 1992, when it was decommissioned, costing £3 million a year just on standby. The parish family bought their land back at auction and opened a museum. It is the largest and deepest Cold War bunker open to the public in the southeast. Visitors lose phone signal the moment they step inside. Crackly 80s government films play on the walls, telling people what to do in a nuclear attack. Walking those corridors feels less like a museum visit and more like a nightmare that nearly came true. Number 22. The Draculo Tunnels in Worcestershire. Beneath Kingsford Country Park, north of Kidderminster, 3.5 miles of tunnels cover 285,000 square feet. In April 1941, the Ministry of Aircraft Production chose this site for a shadow factory, where the Rover Car Company machined parts for Mercury and Pegasus radial engines, used in aircraft like the Bristol Blenheim and Sunderland flying boat. The underground factory was laid out in a grid, with 4 main tunnels each, 18 feet wide and 16 feet high, connected by smaller cross-tunnels. Full production was achieved by May 1943. After the war, production shifted to tank engines until 1958. In 1961, the government converted half the complex into Regional Seat of Government 9, one of 13 nuclear bunkers forming a national network. It was designed for a staff of 325, with dormitories, a BBC studio, and communications equipment. In the 80s, blast doors and airlocks were added to bring it to full nuclear bunker status, and it operated under complete secrecy until the Cold War ended. Since decommissioning in '93, the tunnels have had a colourful afterlife. Tours, airsoft, paintball, paranormal investigations. In 2013, police confiscated 885 cannabis plants worth £650,000 after the caretaker rented space to a drug gang. Part now stores wine. A section operates as a volunteer-run museum. Number 21. The Williamson Tunnels beneath Edge Hill in Liverpool. Subscribe to prove that these videos actually help and actually make sense. If you want a proper British mystery, Liverpool delivers. Beneath Edge Hill lies a labyrinth nobody fully understands. Between 1810 and 1840, tobacco merchant Joseph Williamson employed hundreds of workers to dig, carve, and construct an underground network beneath his property. Williamson was born in Yorkshire in 1769, moved to Liverpool, married into the Tate family, and made his fortune. He acquired land on Mason Street in 1805 and began building houses of eccentric design. The ground behind them dropped sharply, so he built arched terraces over existing quarry scars to extend his gardens. When those terraces were complete, he simply kept going. The tunnels vary enormously. The banqueting hall stretches roughly 70 feet long, 25 feet wide, and 20 feet high. The smallest passages are just 4 feet wide. Some tunnels lead somewhere. Others lead absolutely nowhere. The architectural detail in places seems too intricate for structures never meant to see daylight, which has led some to suggest Williamson was training his workers. He never explained himself. His only recorded comment was that his workers received a weekly wage and enjoyed the blessing of charity without the attendant curse of stifled self-respect. Other theories include an apocalypse shelter, a smuggling network, and an abandoned underground housing scheme. Nobody knows. After his death in 1840, the tunnels were filled with rubble and forgotten until the 90s. Volunteers have since cleared 159 skips by hand from one site alone, uncovering a vaulted chamber 40 feet high, with its floor 60 feet below ground level. The tunnels appeared in Doctor Who, and the public can visit on free guided tours. Number 20. Aldwych Station, on the London Underground. Behind a sealed facade of oxblood red tiles on the Strand lies one of London's most famous ghost stations. Aldwych opened in 1907 as a terminus of a short Piccadilly line branch from Holborn. It was designed by the architect Leslie Green and built on the site of the demolished Royal Strand Theatre. It was never a success. At its peak, 450 passengers used it daily. One platform was taken out of service as early as 1917, and the station finally closed in 1994 when the cost of replacing the lifts outweighed any possible profit. During the Blitz, Westminster Council closed it to trains and opened it as a free air raid shelter. The tunnels also stored sections of the Elgin marbles, Turner paintings from the National Gallery, and the Sutton Hoo treasure, protected by armed guards until 1948. Since closure, Aldwych has become a prized filming location. Sherlock, Atonement, V for Vendetta, Luther and the Prodigy's Firestarter were all shot there. The London Transport Museum runs hidden London tours that sell out almost immediately. Number 19. Down Street Station in Mayfair. Between Hyde Park Corner and Green Park on the Piccadilly line sits another ghost station with a more remarkable wartime story. Down Street opened in 1907, the same year as Aldwych, and closed in 1932 after just 25 years of low footfall. Its location in Mayfair, sandwiched between two larger stations, made success impossible. But in 1939, the disused station was selected as a secret bunker for the Railway Executive Committee, and Churchill himself sheltered there during the Blitz. Platforms were sealed, offices and meeting rooms installed. If you ride the Piccadilly line between those two stations and look to the right, you can still glimpse the bricked-up platforms rushing past in the darkness. Number 18. The Ramsgate Tunnels in Kent. Ramsgate's position across the Channel from Dunkirk made it one of the most bombed towns in Britain. 500 bombs fell in a single 5-minute raid on the 24th of August 1940. Over 1,200 homes were destroyed or damaged, but only 31 people died, thanks to a 3¼ mile tunnel network dug into the chalk beneath the town. Borough engineer R.D. Brimmel had been working on plans since 1936, inspired by Barcelona's deep shelters during the Spanish Civil War. He submitted his proposals to the Home Office in 1938. Rejected as premature. Submitted again after Munich. Rejected again. Only in spring 1939, after Hitler walked into Czechoslovakia, did they relent. The network could shelter 60,000 people, nearly double the population. Tunnels ran at a depth of 50 to 90 feet, with around 12 entrances positioned, so that no home was more than 5 minutes from one. Over 300 families lived permanently underground, creating a hidden city with a barber, shops, a doctor, a postman, and schoolchildren continuing lessons in short corridors. Churchill took shelter during a visit, throwing away his cigar when told smoking was forbidden. After the war, the tunnels were sealed. Urban explorers left graffiti in the 70s and 80s, that now forms its own historical layer, reopened as a tourist attraction in 2011. Number 17. The City of Caves in Nottingham. 1,000 years ago, Nottingham was called Tighew Coborg, the House of Caves. The Bishop of Sherborne described it in 893. The city sits on soft Triassic sandstone, easily carved with simple tools, and the people have been digging downwards for over a millennium. The count now exceeds 1,000 recorded caves, the largest network of artificial caves in the country. Medieval tanneries operated underground, with tanning pits cut into the rock floor, unique to Nottingham in all of Britain. Malt kilns for the brewing trade were carved from the rock. Almost every pub had its own sandstone beer cellar, many still in use. The poorest residents lived underground until legislation banned it in 1845. During the war, the caves served as air raid shelters. Beneath the castle, Mortimer's Hole is a tunnel carved through the sandstone cliff, named for the events of 1330, when the young King Edward III sent soldiers through it to arrest Sir Roger Mortimer. Mortimer was dragged away, tried for treason, and executed. Archaeologists from the University of Nottingham are working to make the caves a centerpiece of one of Europe's largest regeneration projects. Number 16. The Portkernow Telegraph Tunnels in Cornwall. At the far southwestern tip of England, near Land's End, tunnels were dug into a Cornish hillside to protect one of the most important communication centres in the entire British war effort. Porthcurno was the landing point for undersea telegraph cables connecting Britain with the rest of the world, and the messages passing through this small village were of such strategic importance that the decision was made to move the entire operation underground. Tin miners were recruited for the digging, which made sense given Cornwall's long mining heritage. The cover story given to the locals, with the sort of casual dishonesty that only a wartime government could manage, was that they were creating a shortcut to the pub. Behind two huge bomb-proof steel doors, the tunnels contained a fully operational automated relay station, a telegrapher's workshop, and a replica wireless room. A hidden door led to an escape route consisting of 120 steps hewn through solid granite bedrock, where workers could make a run for it in the event of an attack. Number 15. The London Mail Rail beneath Mount Pleasant. For 76 years, driverless electric trains carried mail beneath central London, from Paddington to Whitechapel, through tunnels just 9 feet in diameter, 9 feet below the surface. The Post Office Railway opened in 1927 and moved 4 million letters a day at its peak, bypassing the congested streets above without a single passenger ever boarding. It closed in 2003. In 2017, the Postal Museum opened a section to visitors, allowing rides through the original tunnels in specially designed carriages. It is one of the most unusual museum experiences in the country. Number 14, the Clapham South Deep Level Shelter. 8 deep-level shelters were constructed beneath London Underground stations during the war, each consisting of parallel tunnels about 16 feet in diameter, with bunk beds on 2 decks. Clapham South held 8,000 people. Its most remarkable chapter came in 1948, when passengers from the Empire Windrush were housed in those same bunks that had sheltered Londoners from German bombs 3 years earlier. From this underground starting point, the Windrush generation began building their lives in Britain. The shelter is occasionally open for tours and remains one of the most historically significant underground spaces in the country. Number 13, the Standedge Canal Tunnel beneath the Pennines. Over 3 miles long, the longest, deepest and highest canal tunnel in Britain, running more than 600 feet below the moorland between West Yorkshire and Greater Manchester. Completed in 1811 after 17 years of construction, it was built so narrow there was no room for a towpath. The only way to move a barge through was legging. The boatmen lay on their backs on the deck and walked their feet along the tunnel roof. It took about 3 hours. The tunnel was last used commercially in 1944, sat abandoned for decades, and was restored and reopened in 2001. Guided boat trips now take visitors through the darkness. Number 12, the Hellfire Caves beneath West Wycombe in Buckinghamshire. Half a mile of chalk and flint caves extending 300 feet underground, carved in the 1740s by order of Sir Francis Dashwood. Officially, the excavation provided chalk for a new road. Unofficially, the caves became the meeting place of the notorious Hellfire Club, a secret society of aristocrats and politicians whose activities polite society would rather not discuss. The inner temple sits directly beneath the Church of St. Lawrence on the hilltop above, a placement that was certainly deliberate. Benjamin Franklin is known to have visited. The caves are now a tourist attraction, but they retain a distinctly unsettling atmosphere. Number 11, the Chislehurst Caves in southeast London. 22 miles of passageways carved into chalk beneath the borough of Bromley, stretching back several hundred years and possibly much further. Originally mines for chalk and flint, they have lived more lives than most places above ground. They served as a munitions storage depot during the First World War, and during the Second, they sheltered 15,000 people every night, making them one of the largest civilian shelters in the country. Babies were born down there during the Blitz. A full church operated underground, complete with an altar. The government installed electric lighting, water supply, and a hospital section. In the 1960s and 70s, the caves reinvented themselves again as a music venue, hosting concerts by the Rolling Stones, Jimi Hendrix, and David Bowie, among others. At one point, there was even a talk of turning them into a mushroom farm, which did actually happen for a while. Today they are open for guided tours by lamplight, and the guides are very keen to tell you about the ghosts. Number 10, the Box Tunnel on the Great Western Railway. Designed by Brunel and completed in 1841. Nearly 2 miles long, it was the longest railway tunnel in the world at the time. 4,000 men and 300 horses spent 6 years building it. Around 100 workers died during construction. The enduring legend is that Brunel aligned the tunnel so the sun shines directly through its entire length at sunrise on the 9th of April, his birthday. Engineers and astronomers have debated it for nearly 2 centuries without settling the question. Number 9, the Paddock Bunker beneath Dollis Hill in London. Churchill's backup plan. If Whitehall was destroyed, the government would relocate to a secret bunker beneath the Post Office Research Station, codenamed Paddock, a 2-story concrete citadel buried 40 feet underground, with a map room, cabinet room, dormitories, kitchens, and communications equipment. Churchill visited in 1940 and reportedly declared it a frightful place. He preferred the cabinet war rooms. The bunker was used sporadically during the war and eventually sealed. For decades, the only visible sign was a slightly raised mound in the park above. It is occasionally open for Heritage Days. Number 8, the Fan Bay Deep Shelter beneath the White Cliffs of Dover. Cut into the chalk of the White Cliffs themselves, this tunnel network was built in 1941 as part of the coastal defense system protecting the Strait of Dover. The tunnels housed sound mirrors, an early acoustic detection system for listening to incoming aircraft, along with barracks, a hospital, and stores. After the war, the complex was sealed with concrete and rubble and forgotten for nearly 70 years. In 2015, the National Trust reopened it after a massive volunteer effort to clear tons of debris. The clifftop views over the English Channel are extraordinary. Number 7, the Margate Shell Grotto in Kent. Discovered in 1835 when a man digging a duck pond broke through into an underground passage. A winding corridor leads to a rectangular chamber, and every inch of the walls and ceiling is covered in intricate mosaic patterns made from approximately 4.5 million shells, including cockles, whelks, mussels, and oysters. Nobody knows who made it or when. Theories range from a Roman temple to an 18th century folly to a Masonic meeting place. Carbon dating has been attempted, but proved inconclusive because centuries of soot from gaslighting contaminated the shells. It remains one of the great unsolved mysteries of British archaeology. Number 6. The Kingsway Telephone Exchange beneath High Holborn. Beneath the junction of High Holborn and Kingsway in central London lies a deep level tunnel complex. Originally built as a wartime shelter and later converted into a government telephone exchange. Over a mile of tunnels staffed around the clock during the Cold War, part of the backbone network connecting key government buildings. Decommissioned in the 1980s, proposals for reuse, including a cycling highway and tourist attraction, have come to nothing. The complex remains sealed. Above ground, the only visible evidence is an anonymous entrance in Furnivall Street that looks like it could lead to a car park. Number 5. The underground hospital beneath Dover Castle. Dover, sitting at the closest point between Britain and continental Europe, has been fortified for centuries, and its underground secrets are among the most extensive in the country. Wartime tunnels beneath the medieval castle served as the nerve center for Operation Dynamo, the evacuation of over 300,000 Allied soldiers from Dunkirk in 1940. Masterminded by Vice Admiral Bertram Ramsay, from a room deep within the chalk cliffs. The underground hospital treated casualties with operating theaters, recovery wards, and staff quarters, all carved from the rock and fitted with ventilation to keep the air breathable in a space that was never designed for human habitation. The tunnels also played a role in the D-Day preparations and the Battle of Britain. Today they are managed by English Heritage and open for guided tours that are, by any measure, among the most atmospheric heritage experiences in the country. Number 4. The Bulby Mine in North Yorkshire. Nearly a mile beneath the North York Moors, over 1,100 meters below the surface, scientists search for dark matter in one of the deepest underground laboratories in the world. The Bulby Mine operated as a potash and rock salt mine for decades, but the depth provides extraordinary shielding, blocking cosmic rays and background radiation that would interfere with experiments designed to detect the elusive particles that are believed to make up a quarter of the universe. The fact that this exists beneath peaceful heather moorland and farmland is one of the stranger truths about this country. Number 3. The Gilmerton Cove beneath Edinburgh. South of Edinburgh, in the suburb of Gilmerton, sits an underground complex of hand-carved rooms and passageways cut directly from sandstone bedrock. First recorded in 1724, when a blacksmith named George Patterson claimed to have spent 5 years carving the chambers as his home and workshop. The complex includes a drinking table carved from rock, stone benches, a fireplace, and several rooms. Patterson's story was accepted for a long time, but modern archaeologists have raised serious doubts. The scale and precision seem beyond one man with basic tools. Some believe the chambers are much older, linked to smuggling, clandestine gatherings, or pre-Reformation religious activity. After Patterson's death, the cove served as a drinking den, a refuge for the homeless, and allegedly a meeting place for the Knights Templar, opened to the public in 2003. Number 2. The secret dock tunnels beneath Liverpool. Beneath Liverpool's waterfront lies a network of tunnels and passages connecting the docks with the warehouse district. Some date to the 18th century, when Liverpool was one of the busiest ports in the world. During the war, many underground spaces were commandeered for military use. The Western Approaches Command, which coordinated the Battle of the Atlantic from Liverpool, relied on underground communications infrastructure. Much of this network has been sealed or built over, its full extent poorly documented. Construction work in the city centre occasionally breaks through into forgotten passages, and the people of Liverpool are reminded that their city is only half visible from the surface. Number 1. The Crystal Palace subway in South London. Beneath the road at Crystal Palace Parade lies a spectacular Victorian subway that most Londoners have never heard of. Designed by Charles Barry Jr. and completed in 1865, it was built to provide a grand pedestrian entrance from the Crystal Palace high-level railway station to the Crystal Palace itself. The subway features ornate ironwork, decorative brickwork, and a vaulted roof with glazed panels that once allowed natural light to stream in. When the Crystal Palace burned down in 1936, the subway lost its purpose and was sealed. For decades it sat hidden beneath the A212, used occasionally for storage and gradually falling into disrepair. In recent years, community campaigns have raised awareness of this architectural gem, and occasional open days allow visitors to descend into a space that feels like a portal to the Victorian age. The quality of the design and decoration is remarkable for what was essentially a pedestrian underpass. The ornate columns and the arched ceiling were built with the kind of ambition and confidence that the Victorians brought to everything, even a walkway that most people would use for 30 seconds on their way somewhere else. Standing in the Crystal Palace subway, with the light filtering through those dirty glass panels and the sound of traffic rumbling overhead, surrounded by the ghosts of Victorian ambition and engineering, is one of the strangest and most beautiful experiences available beneath British soil. It is the kind of place that makes you wonder what else is down there, just below the pavement, just out of sight, waiting to be remembered. And that is what lies beneath this country. Tunnels and bunkers and stations and caves, all hidden, most forgotten, many deliberately buried and ignored by the same people who walk above them every single day without a thought for what is under their feet. Britain does not just have a history you can read in books and see in museums. It has a below, and the below is darker, stranger, and far more interesting than anything on the surface. Next time you walk down a street in Edinburgh, or Newcastle, or London, or Liverpool, remember that there is another world just a few feet beneath your shoes, and it is full of stories that the ground above would rather you never heard. Thank you for watching. I am an old man, and an old man worries. Look after yourselves.